The official record states the following. On May 27, 1962, Centralia Borough Council hired a crew to burn the town landfill. The landfill occupied a former strip mine pit at the edge of town in Columbia County, Pennsylvania. The fire was extinguished, or it was believed to be extinguished. Within weeks, subsurface heat readings confirmed combustion was continuing below the surface. This is the foundational entry in the administrative record. It is also the entry that produces the first structural anomaly when audited against the documented timeline. Anthracite coal region of east central Pennsylvania is not a metaphor. It is a geological system. The veins run northeast to southwest across 6 counties. They are ancient, compressed carbon deposits formed over 300 million years. Centralia sits directly above the Buck Mountain vein and the Mammoth vein, 2 of the thickest anthracite seams ever commercially extracted in the Western Hemisphere. Below the town, as of 1962, lay an estimated 1,000 miles of interconnected underground shafts. Many of them were unmapped. Many of them were timber-supported. All of them contained residual coal dust, exposed coal faces, and pockets of combustible gas. This is the substrate. This is the system the fire entered. Cunningham Valley had been mined since 1856. By the time the Centralia fire started, the underground infrastructure was over 100 years old. The Lehigh Coal and Navigation Company, the Philadelphia and Reading Coal and Iron Company, and a succession of smaller operators had extracted coal through a patchwork of private concessions with inconsistent surveying standards. The Pennsylvania Department of Mines and Mineral Industries held incomplete maps. This is a documented administrative fact, not an inference. The Bureau of Mines field reports from 1963 explicitly note that the agency was operating with partial subsurface cartography. Here is the first anomaly in the administrative record. The standard protocol for a landfill fire adjacent to an abandoned mine complex requires immediate notification of the State Bureau of Mines, emergency excavation to locate the fire's leading edge. It burns hotter. It burns slower. Once it establishes in a vein, extinguishing it requires physical removal of the fuel, meaning excavation, not suppression of surface symptoms. Every mining engineer in Pennsylvania in 1962 knew this. The protocol was not ambiguous. The Centralia Borough did not immediately notify the State Bureau of Mines. The initial suppression attempt, water and soil, was conducted by the fire department without subsurface engineering assessment. By the time the Bureau of Mines was formally engaged, heat readings in the former strip mine pit had already reached levels consistent with active coal combustion, not surface refuse combustion. The fire had migrated. The window for low-cost, high-probability extinguishment had closed. The administrative record logs this sequence without commentary. The sequence itself is the data point. Between 1962 and 1969, fly ash, a fine particulate byproduct of coal combustion, into the subsurface to smother the fire by eliminating oxygen pathways. The 4th involved a second trench operation. The 5th involved a combination of flushing and barrier injection. All 5 operations were assessed as failures in their own after-action reports. The engineering analysis of each failure is technically consistent. The subsurface system was too large and too poorly mapped to reliably target the fire's leading edge. Each trench reached a depth and a cost threshold and was halted. Each halt was administratively justified. What the administrative record does not resolve is a specific pattern in the timing of the halts. In multiple documented instances, subsurface temperature monitoring indicated that the fire's leading edge was approaching the trench boundary. That is, the mitigation infrastructure was in proximity to the combustion zone. At the moment operations were suspended. The suspensions were attributed to budget exhaustion, equipment limitations, or revised geological assessments. Each justification, in isolation, is plausible. The pattern, audited across the full timeline, is a variable that has not been formally explained in any state or federal post-mortem. Bucyrus Erie cable tool drills deployed during the 1973 assessment drilled a grid of boreholes across the subsurface fire zone. The thermal mapping produced by this survey documented a combustion zone roughly 1,800 feet long and 300 feet wide, at depths between 50 and 300 feet. The survey team noted the fire had moved northeast along the coal vein at a rate inconsistent with passive coal combustion. The movement rate implied a subsurface airflow pattern. Oxygen was reaching the fire through a pathway the existing maps did not account for. The report recommended immediate large-scale excavation as the only remaining high-probability mitigation option. The estimated cost was $4.5 million. The recommendation was not acted upon for 8 years. In 1981, Domboski, a 12-year-old resident, subsidence hole, a collapse of the undermined surface layer, that measured approximately 4 feet wide and extended an estimated 150 feet to a superheated steam vent below. He was pulled out by a cousin before losing his grip on a root system at the edge of the collapse. Carbon monoxide readings taken at the hole measured at lethal concentrations. This event is the most cited data point in the public narrative of Centralia. It functions as the moment the crisis became legible to outside observers. What the administrative record shows, however, is that carbon monoxide intrusions into residential structures had been documented since at least 1969. The Columbia County Emergency Management Agency had issued formal notifications to multiple households about dangerous indoor air quality. The residents had been living inside a documented gas intrusion zone for over a decade before the Domboski incident converted the administrative anomaly into a nationally visible event. The variable to audit is not the whole. The variable is the 12-year gap between the first documented residential carbon monoxide readings and the formal declaration of emergency. Within that gap, the state possessed thermal maps, gas readings, and structural assessments. The residents possessed informal notifications and personal carbon monoxide monitors, some of which were installed by the state. The decision to maintain residential occupation of a zone with documented lethal gas intrusion over a multi-year period is an administrative choice. The record shows the choice being made, repeatedly, without a formal risk assessment document justifying it. The absence of that document is itself a document. In 1983, the United States Congress allocated $42 million for voluntary relocation of Centralia residents. In 1984, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania invoked eminent domain authority over properties in the most severely impacted areas. By 1992, the population had been reduced from approximately 100 residents at the fire's origin to approximately 50. In 2002, the United States Postal Service revoked zip code 17927, the numerical designation that had indexed Centralia as a habitable place in the federal administrative system was formally retired. The eminent domain process is legally routine. The state identifies a public necessity, condemns private property, and compensates owners at assessed value. What is administratively unusual in the Centralia case is the scope. The condemnation was not limited to the immediate subsidence zone. It was extended progressively to cover the entire borough footprint. Every structure. Every lot. The legal mechanism converted the entirety of Centralia's land area into state-owned property. The Commonwealth now holds sovereign title to the geographic coordinates of an incorporated municipality that still, technically, exists as a legal entity under Pennsylvania statute. The municipality was not dissolved. Its charter was not revoked. Centralia Borough remains an incorporated entity in the Pennsylvania Administrative Ledger. It has a mayor. It has no services, no budget, and no residents beyond a small number of holdouts who successfully contested their eminent domain orders in court. The state owns the land. The borough owns the government structure. This jurisdictional condition, a government entity operating over a land base it does not own, surrounded by a landowner with no obligation to provide municipal services, is not a standard administrative configuration. It is a configuration that has persisted for over 30 years without formal legislative resolution. DEP at approximately 3,500 acres of subsurface combustion. The estimate carries a high uncertainty margin because comprehensive new mapping has not been funded. The DEP's most recent formal assessment, issued in 2005, concluded that the fire could continue burning for another 250 years, given current subsurface fuel availability. This figure is not alarming rhetoric. It is a geological projection derived from known vein thickness, known burn rate, and known anthracite energy density. 250 years is a planning horizon that exceeds the operational lifespan of every institution currently responsible for monitoring the site. Route 61, the primary surface road through the former town center, was officially closed and rerouted in 1993 after repeated pavement failures caused by subsidence and thermal expansion. The original roadway, Ashland Mount Carmel, now terminates at barricades on both ends of the Centralia footprint. The surface of the abandoned section has fractured progressively over the following decades. Steam vents are visible through the cracks in warm months. Locals and visitors have marked the asphalt with graffiti since the closure. The Pennsylvania Department of Transportation has periodically patched and repaved sections of the closed roadway, then watched the patches fracture again within months. This is a recurring budget line in the maintenance ledger. The dot patches a road that carries no traffic over a fire that cannot be extinguished, because the alternative, formal removal of the roadway infrastructure, would require a capital project authorization that has not been prioritized. The monitoring infrastructure over the Centralia fire zone consists of a small number of gas monitoring wells and periodic thermal flyover surveys. The wells log carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and methane concentrations at depth. The data is collected. The data is filed. There is no active adaptive management protocol tied to the monitoring outputs. The fire is not being managed. It is being observed. This distinction between management and observation is the operational condition of the Centralia site in the present tense. The Commonwealth owns the land. The fire consumes the subsurface. The monitoring systems record the consumption. The ledger is maintained. No intervention is planned or budgeted. The 1962 landfill fire in the administrative record is classified as an accident. The subsequent 12 years of documented residential gas intrusion without mandatory evacuation is classified as a series of resource-constrained responses. The failure of 5 sequential mitigation operations is classified as a function of geological complexity. The eminent domain acquisition of an entire municipality is classified as a public safety measure. The revocation of the zip code is classified as an administrative update. The 250-year burn projection is classified as a geological assessment requiring no immediate action. Each classification is individually defensible. The sequence, audited as a complete set, produces a coherent outcome that no single classification accounts for. The Mammoth vein burns northeast. The subsurface system processes its inventory on its own schedule. The surface has been cleared of monitoring variables. The ledger remains open. The entries continue.